Good evening. I'm pleased you folks are here for this candidates night, and I'm hopeful you will feel rewarded for your presence. And what we are going to start is to let each candidate have a couple of minutes to speak who they are and why they are interested in the position for which they're running. And then we'll allow the audience to ask questions. After that, if a candidate wishes to make another moment speech that is for a minute, that would be allowed. But we want to thank Wolfeboro Community Television for their taping of this presentation, so we're thankful for that. Ron has told me that it will make YouTube at least, and maybe Metrocast will pick it up, but we're not sure of that. So we'll have to see where all of that goes. So, with that said, my name is Peter Royce, and I'm your town treasurer. I've got some other jobs, but not as important as town treasurer. And I'm very happy to be here to moderate this discussion. So again, I would ask the candidates to limit their presentation to just a couple of minutes, not to go on at length. And certainly, I don't imagine it would happen, but as Stan Swire always said, no personal attacks, nothing negative. Let's just present who you are and what you hope to do, and we'll go from there. So, Steve?
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming as well. It shows that you're interested in the governance of the town, and that's very important. I am Steve Saunders, and moved to the town 4 years ago. Began attending the Board of Selectmen meetings on a regular basis, and became very familiar with the events and issues presented to the town. I joined the Advisory Budget Committee, and working with Peter and the other members of that committee, we were able to make several suggestions to improve the budget process. Things were not always as evident as we would like, and this year I think those suggestions were adopted, and it was the smoothest process we've had in a long time. I'm also serving as sort of the deputy treasurer to back up Peter when he's not able to do his job. When I came to town, there was a major meeting of the residents called the envisioning process, when the townspeople got together and looked out 5 to 20 years to say, what do they want the town to look like in 20 years? And put together a bunch of committees to do that, come up with suggestions on how we might move forward. I joined the Economic Development Steering Committee, came up with suggestions for how to increase the tax base so that we could reduce the tax burden on the residents. Thought that was very important. Have been somewhat disappointed, and there's been a good follow-through on some of those suggestions. They kind of waned in interest, and I think that as your selectman, I would go back and try to revitalize some of those initiatives to make sure we move forward. Also, another focus of mine came out of the deliberative session, in a sense. The residents showed a very vocal frustration with transparency, especially as it related to facilities that the town needs. And that's a pattern that they also talked to me about relative to other issues in the town. I believe that there is some justification to that perception, and I would work diligently to improve the transparent communication of issues before the town. I think there's many things that the board can do to improve its crispness and efficiency and effectiveness in the meetings, make them more interesting for the townspeople so that we can get more involvement and input from the residents, which is critical. So that's something that I would like to focus on as well. I do bring 35 years worth of executive level experience and have facilitated and worked on boards before, so I think I can make a contribution, and I hope I can convince you of that fact. Thank you.
Hello all. I've been in town now since I think 2001, if I've got that right. The great part about this election this year, and I'll say hats off to Steve as well, is that I think you have two really good qualified candidates for the Board of Selectmen. The reason that I chose to run for this position, because we know it's a volunteer position, but an elected position, I did a lot of investigating on my own to see how much time needed to be put into doing this well before making the choice to run for this position. I recently completed a master's in public policy, and it became very clear to me that we're really impacted at the local level in a way that I'm not sure we all realize. And so choosing to run for this position really came out of not only my education, but my love for this town. We have some of the most amazing community events, community involvement. We are definitely very rural in character, but at the same way, if you read through our profile on New Hampshire Public Policy website, we are an educated group. We are earning at higher levels than some of the other towns. And I think what we speak of and want within this town really became clear at the deliberative session. And it became clear to me that my job, should I be elected to this position, is to do listening and not talking. So I can give you a laundry list of what I have for background, but I can tell you that I feel like there's a shift taking place. The state of New Hampshire overall is aging a little bit. We need to be mindful of our older residents at the same time that we're focused on our children and their needs. I know that taxes are so important to all of us, and I think that with really good planning for what needs to happen in Barrington's future, you can stabilize the tax rate, still provide the services that are needed. And the very last thing I'll tell you is I'm a certified senior human resource professional. And what occurs to me is that this town has incredible human capital working here. It helps keep costs down. We have teachers that remain here in Barrington long-term, and I'm quite certain in reviewing some material I've reviewed, they are not the highest paid teachers in the state. So the human capital here in the town of Barrington is amazing. We talk often on Barrington, New Hampshire Connections about our highway department and what an incredible job they do. I think that we've done a great job cutting the budget to where it can be sustainable, but I also think we need to plan for our future, and that's important to me, and I think it's important to the people that I've heard speak about Barrington.
First of all, I'd like to thank Peter and Ron in prior years for putting this forum together. I think it's a great event. Not only is it good for the community, which clearly we're all here to support, but I think it's also good for the candidates as well. Not only just to understand what else is going on in different positions, but also just to remember that at the end of the day, really why we're here is to serve the public at large. Anyway, my name is Dave Gibson. I've been in town for just under 20 years. I'm running for re-election for the school board, as is my cohort here, Mr. Hatfield. So I have two daughters. We moved to town back in the late 90s. We moved here, frankly, for the affordable real estate and the beautiful country setting. But the reality is that we stayed here because of the extraordinary people that we met, shortly after moving to town. And I think it's a recurring theme. I know that I brought it up a little bit during our deliberative session, but the reality is that when you take a look at Barrington, it's people, but more importantly, the values of the people here. It's remarkable how we come together. We come together when it really matters. So for a town that really is made up of a lot of commuters, when it really counts, whether you're at the BYA in the summer or whether you're at fundraisers here in town or frankly events here at the school, it's pretty impressive to see how the community comes together, and that's what got me involved in the town and the school. Prior to being on the school board, I was the treasurer for a term. But really what drew me in was the desire to leverage the sort of the extraordinary values that our town has and, you know, really parlay that into continuing to grow and build a, you know, a quality school district that frankly represents those values. So whether it's high school choice or full-day kindergarten or a strong focus on academics and curriculum, and then of course, you know, the binder that brings it all together is accountability. You know, those have really been the recurring themes that I've tried to push on in my stint here on the school board. You know, looking forward, you know, I think we want to keep the momentum going. You know, I think this town has a tremendous amount of pride, whether it's on the town or the school side, and the quality of its facilities and the quality of sort of the services it provides to, whether it's the students, the parents, or frankly the residents in general. And really making sure that, you know, while we provide those services and we provide those, provide those products to our residents, that, you know, we're also really cognizant of our fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers. So, you know, anyone can throw a lot of money at a problem or a set of problems and try to overcome them. But I think what Barrington, I think what this board has done, I think what we'd like to try to do going forward is, you know, continue to solve problems, both problems that we know that we have and problems that we don't necessarily anticipate, but do it in a way that really has the least amount of tax impact to our residents. So that's sort of a little bit of my history and really why I'm looking to continue on. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tim Hatfield, and I'm running for a seat on the Barrington School Board. I've served on this board for the last 5 years and would like the opportunity to continue. I take this job very seriously. I view the responsibility of this position to be both responsive and receptive to the parents, students, teachers, staff, and community we serve here in Barrington. I viewed our job to assist in setting the long-term vision and strategy for our district. We want to provide each student with the tools and resources necessary to not only succeed, but excel in the high schools that they attend when they finish up in our school district. I've lived here for the past 11 years. I have 2 daughters in the middle school and a newborn son at home, so you guys have your hooks in me for quite some time. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sam Boduk, and first off, I'd like to thank Peter and Ron for putting together this great forum. I think it's an excellent opportunity for people to come out and get to know who they're voting for, because come voting day, a lot of times it's just a name without a reputation. So kudos to you. And also, I want to thank you folks in the crowd for coming out too and taking time out of your busy week. And last, I'll thank my fellow candidates as well for putting yourself out there for town service. It's a lot of time in and out of meetings, and that is really of great value, a lot of time unrecognized value for the town. So about myself, I've been a resident of town for just over 34 years now, and my whole family, for the most part, is still residing in the town. Used to be that on Ramsdale Lane, formerly known as Province Lane, you couldn't throw a stone without hitting a buttock. So in some cases, that's still true. As far as the position of trustee, I've been a trustee for the past 7 years or so. I was fortunate enough to come on with a great board, including Susan Gaudiello, whose seat I filled at the time. And yeah, it's been a great board to serve with, and it continues to be. I'm also a founding member of the Barrington Library Foundation, which seeks to raise funds for large capital projects for the library. So we've been very fortunate as trustees and as residents of this town to have an amazing director for the past 21 years. And that's Amy Ingles. She's just, she came on fresh out of school, and she's just been a rock star. And she keeps us as trustees on point, and she's just amazing. And she's run that library with a very frugal budget. In fact, when it comes to certain things, we have to, push her a little bit. So that's been a great thing to have. And I've also been been lucky to have, as I said, a great group of, a great mix of both tenured colleagues on the Board of Trustees and some fresh blood too. And hats off to Ron and Peter again, because they've been on the board for, both on the board for over a decade apiece. And sadly, we'll be losing them from the Board of Trustees come this March. But we've been very fortunate to have them. As trustees, we do face a few challenges in the coming years. One thing we've been experiencing in the past 2 years or so is staff turnover. And I think it's a challenge when the job market is doing a bit better to maintain government positions that aren't necessarily paying competitive wages. We have a new director coming on board in early March. We'll be releasing more public information about that position in the coming weeks. And there's also the challenge we've been dealing with for the past 18 years, which is an overcrowded library. It's very well undersized for not only the size of the town, but the demand that we put on it. So these are some of the challenges that we have been working to tackle and that we will continue to. And that's my plan as candidate, is to stick with it and help the town work through it in a sensible manner. And I'll say that we are very fortunate as trustees to have great support from you, our townspeople, not only in the votes you make, but also in the coming out to the different programs and actually participating.
My name is Susan Frankel, and I've been in town since 1981. I'm running for the position of trustee, and currently I serve as an alternate trustee. I've been doing that since about June. Joining the board for me is a way of giving to the community and also supporting an important local resource. Like many others here, the local library has been an important part of my life, fostering enjoyment of reading, as well as providing reference material, resource information throughout my many years of schooling. The local library was also my first paid job, my first regular paycheck job, was shelving books in our local library. And when I first moved to Barrington in 1981, the library was the first place I went in order to find out more information about the community. Because of its central role in my life and in others as well, I want to contribute to the library as it continues to play a vital resource, play a vital role in this community. And Sam has enumerated the challenges that are coming ahead for us as it continues to play this important role. I feel my background, professional background in working with educationally related programs, both in school settings and outside school settings, will be useful for informing and guiding the direction of the library as it continues to support everybody in town. Thank you, and I look forward to serving on the board.
My name is Kimberly Karakas. I am the town clerk in Barrington. I've worked for the town for about 18 years. I've been the town clerk for the last 7 years. Before that, I was the deputy. I am a certified New Hampshire municipal clerk, and I have a certification from the International Institute of Municipal Clerks. That's a worldwide type of certification for clerks. I've gone through schooling over the past several years to maintain education on all the different aspects of in the clerk world. Last year, we switched our program, and now residents can go online and renew their registrations, license their dogs, apply for certified copies, and you can do this with an electronic transfer from your checking account. It's a step closer, which I keep trying, to do a credit card. One day we will have that, but we'll wait and see how it goes. From my treasurer, who's a little hesitant, but we're getting there slowly. So in the town clerk, like I said, we register motor vehicles, I license dogs, I do marriage applications, we do marriage, birth, death certificates, you can come to the town clerk for that. I conduct the local and state elections. We receive voter registrations, I do absentee ballots, and I maintain all the records. So most things in town, you usually come see me and I can direct you where you need to go. I'm going to continue, hopefully, being the town clerk. Nobody's running against me, so that's always a good thing. But thank you all for coming out.
Yeah, I'm a candidate for town moderator and school district moderator, and I know you haven't heard anybody say that for a long time. We've lived in town for 42 years and have only known 2 moderators in all that time. So it sure looks like it must be a fun job. I figured I ought to try that. I'm just finishing up my 18th year as a library trustee. I loved serving as a trustee of the library. The library is one of the most democratic institutions there is. It provides everyone equal access to information regardless of who they are, what they have, what they know, who they know. It's a great institution. It was wonderful to be part of it. But becoming town moderator seems like the logical next thing to do. The moderator, as the chief election officer, works with the town clerk. She does most of the hard work. And other election officials to guarantee voters and candidates the opportunity to participate in fair and legal elections, the foundation of our democratic system. The moderator also runs the deliberative sessions at which voters can become informed about and can modify articles that will appear on the town warrant. The position of moderator offers the opportunity to be involved with ensuring people's opportunity to be heard and their right to be heard, both by speaking and by ballot. And that's something I'd like to do. So we appreciate your support. Thanks.
I would now encourage those in the audience, if they wish to ask questions. But one of the complexities we've had in the past is please keep in mind that if your question or concern is relative to the town government, you want to be asking the 2 persons to my left. And if your question or concern is relative to the school, you want to be asking Dave or Tim. So please don't be asking one candidate issue that really is relative to the other. So are there questions from the audience? Tracy.
This question is for Steve and Tracy. My question is, I'm sure that you're well aware that there are some buildings in the town that have some deficiencies. We know that the library is one of them, the fire and police department, and the town hall to be built. So my question to you is, how would you prioritize these buildings for the town?
So, in listening to some of what is needed here in town, and I'm extracting this from meetings, meeting minutes, and listening to the people in the community of this town, there were a few things that the study that was conducted on the police department uncovered. I think anything that can lead to litigation, either on the part of someone at the police station or working in the police station, I think you have to give priority to that. However, what we uncovered at the deliberative session is that in 2022, the bond on this building is paid for. We also know that over the next few years, the federal interest rate is going to rise, and that if we don't make decisions soon about how we will approach any of our buildings, we'll be borrowing money at a higher interest rate. And so I think it's important that we weigh in safety, we weigh in very specifically on things that can cause litigation issues. We've certainly seen some history of when litigation takes place. It's costly. Lawyers make lots of money. Sorry if there's any lawyers in the audience, but lawyers make plenty of money during litigation, but let's face reality, it's not the best way to approach things. So for me, safety, planning for anything that you're sure has to be done. You know, it's written that the police department must have X, Y, and Z. I think the study that was conducted, lay out what needs to happen with that. I really strongly feel, and I feel this personally, but I also listened at the deliberative session. I think on the horizon, we need to think about our town buildings. Paying rent in any form has never been wise. I encourage my own grown children to not pay rent because you're giving someone else your money. So I do think with the bond on this building expiring that we should be thinking very clearly about what needs to happen with both the fire department, police station, but also our town hall and our library plan. This demographic here in Barrington, our home values are certainly going up, and I think our connection with Oyster River and our connection with Co-Brown has certainly had an influx of people wanting to move here. I think we need to be planning, and I think the great thing is knowing that the bond is expiring, knowing that we're probably at our lowest right now of what you can borrow money at. It's time to do something, and part of my candidacy is based on knowing that if we, and I kept hearing this term and I don't like it, but if we kick the can down the road, no. If we push off these decisions, they will cost us more eventually. So what I'm hoping to be a part of is some really wise planning on those buildings.
It's a very good question, because those are the key issues that can affect the taxes that we pay. And one of the issues that I brought up and we became parent, the deliberative session, was that things were happening as a reaction to an opportunity rather than a plan that had been put forth that really took into account a lot of things. The needs are very significant. And in fact, the needs assessment that was done for the police department was a very well done assessment. I think it is highly clear to me that the safety issues that are transparent there and the liability issues that are there must be addressed, and as soon as we can. The needs for the town, of the other facilities in the town, also need to be planned. And one of the things that I think came out of the deliberative session was that the article that is now there looks at setting aside funds that we have available in the general fund in a plan for it. The town has done that regularly for all the major equipment purchases, fire engines, for the police cruisers, I mean, for the things that are in the major highway department equipment. We put aside a little bit each year so that we don't get hit with having to do a bond. And we have an opportunity now to do just that. And while we can go forward then this year with the real heavy-duty planning that's needed to look at how best to meet all of those needs, and I think they're all going to come together about the same time. It's all going to be on the same campus. And if it's well thought out, I think that we'll end up with the services and facilities that we need.
Please, is also for Steve and Tracy. I was wondering if you could give me your perspective on the relative advantages or disadvantages of residential development versus keeping land under current use or putting land under conservation easements, both financial and otherwise.
Question that we have, that the board hasn't addressed too much recently, because what came out of the envisioning sessions that we came up with was that the residential versus conservation, the character of the town that the residents wanted to have is still a very rural nature and not concentrated, clustered housing developments. And it was very important to do that, but in order to support that without increasing the tax consequences to the residents, you need to have a plan for economic development, bringing in the commercial properties and expanding their ability. And that's a focus that has really not gelled in my mind. And I think the board needs to revitalize the issue of bringing in, increasing the tax base so that we can keep the character of the town the way the residents want it to be.
So some of the material that I have read on what can be done here in Barrington speaks a little bit to why our commercial growth is limited. However, at the same time that we don't have the infrastructure of water and sewer that most often large corporations are looking for, there certainly is a balance that takes place with the more residents that you add to a town in a well thought out way with an appropriate amount of land per house. You then increase the demand for other services. And in a service-driven economy, that means more restaurants, more retail stores, more physicians groups, more growth that can actually occur off of those dedicated water and sewer lines. So I think you know, the purpose of having a town planner and really projecting for growth is to be able to project and manage the future. I don't, and I hope that you'll agree with me, don't choose to see Barrington look like Epping, New Hampshire. I certainly don't want us to live in an environment like we would live in if we were residing in Rochester. It tends to be a lot more populous. But I do think that using our town planner and the information we have, along with a lot of policy briefs on communities that are already produced through UNH, we really can come up with some ideas on how to expand the tax base and manage to keep our rural character here.
As well, first of all, thank you for running. Good luck to both of you. Both seem like very thoughtful people, so I think either way we're going to end up winning. I noticed on the ballot this year is Keno for the town of Barrington, which I don't really have a fully formed opinion on, nor deliberative. It didn't seem to get much discussion, but I was wondering what your thoughts were on allowing this expanded gaming opportunity in our pouring establishments along Route 125 and elsewhere.
First of all, I was surprised it was a warrant article. I guess I think of New Hampshire, we're going to have an influx of people come to play Keno. I think it's up to the townspeople. I don't have a vested interest. I think oftentimes people view gambling as opening up a door to more gambling. I don't anticipate we'll have a casino here in Barrington. So my thoughts are truly let the voters decide. I think it's important that they speak their opinion on it. I won't be gambling, it's not my thing. I'm not even sure I'd be able to figure out what Keno is. But I think this is one of those times where it wasn't taken off at the deliberative session. People didn't feel as passionately about whether it was there or not, and I think the voters will decide whether it takes place.
The Keno issue, to me, is one that was raised and brought to us by some of the restaurants and places that would have it. It's not like building a casino. It would happen and occur within the existing businesses that we do have, according to my understanding of the law. And it's still sketchy because I haven't really done a study of it. And I think that what the residents need to do, if we can give it to them, is to be more transparent in terms of what does that really mean. Who is it that benefits from that? The funds do go to a statewide fund for children, I believe. And so it's not anything that the businesses or Barrington will benefit from. So it becomes one of, does it create more traffic? Potentially not. It's just in existing businesses. It's not opening up new businesses. So I think that I myself am neutral on it. I don't know how I'm going to vote on that. But I think the residents will sort it all out.
So just like the candidates again, Steve Diamond. This is a very general question. I believe the selectman position is a 3-year? 3. In 3 years, what would you like to see the town still be looking like and being? And what would you like to see brought about that's different, other than what you've already discussed?
I think in 3 years, we have an opportunity to provide the facilities that the residents need within good fiscal responsibility. It would require some intensive planning. It would require more time to do this right, and getting all 3 of the interests that we have to satisfy put together. If I had my druthers, it would all be on one campus if possible, so that the residents can know one place to go that would meet their needs, where we would have facilities for meetings, where we can have facilities for off-hours meetings, where we can have groups like this get together without having to disturb the schools and so on, that would be part of the facilities within the town. I would also hope that at the end of this 3 years, we would have the kind of interaction that we're having here as a regular feature of the board meetings. Right now, they're very partially attended. People don't know usually what's going to be on the agenda. You have to dig to find out what the issues are going to be. So that information and dissemination and gaining input from the residents is a regular feature, which I think that will benefit everyone in town.
I mentioned before that New Hampshire has an aging population, and so one of the things that occurs to me is that the buildings that will exist, they have to have multi-purpose in many ways. They have to be able to meet the needs of a library where preschoolers are meeting with moms, but also have meeting space for maybe a group of older residents that want to be coming together and still having interactions with their neighbors about town as well. So I think the planning has to address multiple audiences. I really, tell you honestly, I think that energy efficiency, use of clean energy anytime we can use it in any building process is important. I love the idea, I know we can only put 2 buildings on the Ramsdale Lane campus, but I love the idea of you're plowing 1 parking lot, not 2, if you have multiple buildings in one space. I think it was very clear at the deliberative session that there was a strong voice for what the shaping of our future should look like. And it was kind of exciting to hear how passionate people were about that. I do think we really need to be mindful that as we're planning things, we're also keeping in mind that human capital and retaining people. When I think of our highways and things like that and our planning of things, if you have one really solid employee who knows how to fix that truck that's broken so you're not sending it out to service, I always think to myself, that one piece of human capital, that one human is saving a repair, they're saving downtime on a truck. I can think of 100 different instances where that is very true of people. And so as we're planning, we need to be listening to those people. Our police chief has shared what his needs are. I think Rick Walker has probably one of the strongest, pulses of a fire chief, of understanding what a community this, with this much land mass and the homes so spread out actually need. So I think that there's been a lot of good studies done, and I'm hoping that if we can't fit the 3 buildings together, that we do our planning and we get 2 beautiful buildings that are energy efficient in the same area, that we fund it at the lowest cost possible, that we stop paying rent, and that we increase the value of what it means to live in Barrington by having the infrastructure in place that makes us compete with a Dover, New Hampshire.
So there's been a growing concern in Barrington due to the lack of attendance at voting, deliberative session, events like this. And I'm wondering, as a public official, what would be your ideas for rallying the community to attend these types of events?
Having watched the board struggle with trying to get more involvement, I looked at the envisioning exercise as one that did have very good participation. That was an event that was facilitated by UNH, and it was a very effective format. The technology today does offer different means and modes for communicating and interacting with the residents. The social media concept and so on is one that this town has not capitalized on or tried to develop. And it will be a challenge to reach everybody, because not everybody has the cable TV, not everybody has internet access that's workable. So I would encourage this board, when I'm on it, to explore using the technology in a better, more effective way. There are some very minor things that we can do in terms of the agendas and the way they're put together and so on to get the people's knowledge out there. But the whole concept of streaming is one that other places that I've been, and while they had more funds than we did, their board meetings were all conducted over streaming, and you could watch them live and also interact with questions to those boards through that medium. Now, whether we can do that and really set it up here, I don't know. it's something that we need to look at the different residents and the different demographics that we do have to say that we have multiple ways we need to communicate and to get that input from them. Blogs and websites are one that I would like to explore if I'm there.
Again, I think the point's well taken, that we have approximately 6,500 registered voters, and typically for a town-only election, as we will see, we're doing well to get 10 to 15% of those people to actually vote. So I think it's a significant issue. The whole idea of SB2 was to get more people to turn out. And yeah, you have more people than we had at town meeting, but we still have a very poor percentage. So to espouse my personal views, but I'll turn it over to Dave.
I think we could use Zoom to have people potentially send questions in electronically if that's what we're looking for an audience. I think we can use SurveyMonkey and be asking some very specific questions using something as simple as our Barrington, New Hampshire Connections Facebook page. People who would want to participate can certainly, if you put a survey out there, could give us their feedback. I think that we have a new website. It could certainly contain within the website small videos for people to watch so that they can see clips of what happens at the meetings, and that could certainly encourage more participation. I know there's 2 groups in town that have formed over the years that send out nonpartisan information regarding warrant articles, and I think that has been helpful in years to get information out to the voters and to encourage people to participate in the process. But more than that, I think when you're elected to a position, your job is to seek out information. And so I don't generally have trouble public speaking. I think it will be important for me to keep my mouth shut and my ears open if you elect me to a position. So I think that's what I have to share about that.
I don't know, I thought this was a town moderator question, frankly. I think that we should have started with Ron, right?
It's gonna be 9 o'clock by the time we get down to this end of the thing.
I'll keep my comments brief. I mean, it's an ongoing question, and rather than giving sort of a granular response, I'll say that one of the things that we struggle with on the school side, and I'm sure it's also the same with the town, is that when we think about communication, I think what we have to remind ourselves is that communication isn't static, right? It evolves. So what works for communication, methods of communication and outreach this year may be different than what works next year or the year after that. So, first and foremost, I think that regardless of whether you're in the selectmen or the school board or the libraries or whatever, I think that the most important thing is that anybody who's involved with any of those boards needs to keep in mind that really needs to take a pragmatic look at communication and understand that how I communicate, how others communicate can vary greatly, and also it evolves over time. I will say this though, I think that one of the challenges that we have, and certainly we can improve on where and how we post information for folks who wish to get that information. The town did frankly, I think a great job revamping its website. I know that the schools are looking at doing the same thing, and frankly, Mr. Hatfield here actually looked at the town's model as being one that maybe we could piggyback off of. So that's one form of communication, but more importantly, I think what we need to focus on as a collective group is, how do we, not so much how do we make information available for those who seek it, but more importantly, how do we make sure that we can push information out? Because I think when we think about traction, whether it's this event or other events, the reality is that you get the most traction when you push information out, not just when you have information posted or available in a static site. So I think that's something that we have to work on. One thing that I think that both boards, all the boards would actually benefit from is that, if we had a proactive sort of community outreach when it comes to communication, maybe scheduling, even if it's once or twice a year, have something that's between a standard board meeting and a deliberative session. So having, you know, sort of an all hands, you know, community town hall forum. So it's the library, it's the school, it's the selectmen. You know, they're not making decisions and they're not voting, but really it provides our residents a place where they can show up and, you know, voice their opinion, raise concerns. You know, maybe every once in a while, you know, some accolades would be nice, but, you know, have it all in sort of one room and, you know, make that available to the public as well, so that, you know, the public can be a little bit more aware of what's going on with all the boards, but also it gives the boards, you know, some great visibility into what's on the minds of the public.
If there was a magic button, I'd press it, but I don't think there is. One of the things Dave talked about, and like the town has done with the website, that's one of the things I think as a school district we can work on. Our site currently looks like it's straight out of 1990, so I think there's some improvements there. Try to make things more accessible to people on there, you know, whether it be through an app or something like that, and try to push the information out as much as possible. The other thing is, people are busy. They're not always going to find time to come to your meetings and stuff like that, so you have to make yourself available in the community, whether it be on the ball field, at school, at different town events. You have to make sure you're present and always there to listen. A lot of people are a lot more comfortable coming up to you in private than they are to come to a meeting and address the board. So I think it's important to pursue that information, you know, through any avenue you can.
Yeah, so first of all, great question, Tracy. Because I would love to see this room filled and the ballot, the voting day filled. We had that with the national election, but it would be good to see that for town votes too, and all the meetings in between. So this is one of the things that was kind of circled upon in the envision process that Steve touched upon, that he and I were both a part of. And communication, and also I think it's more engagement is a more proper term, because you can communicate all you want, but if the message isn't engaging to your audience, then it may just be ignored. I see a few different avenues. One that's already being used is the library newsletter, and as a trustee, I think that we are, I'll speak for myself, not the rest of the board of trustees, but we are more than happy to use that resource and get any sort of town information out to the public. We do it already, but we're happy to expand that as needed, or at least that's my personal opinion. And we have, you know, over 4,000 people that have library cards. We'd love more. If anybody in the audience does not have a library card, so that's, you know, potentially 4,000 people that we're talking to, half the population. Piggybacking on what was said earlier too, I think there's opportunity for using technology too, not only for, you know, having whatever, a Twitter feed or a maybe even a text message option, opt in if you want to follow the town of Barrington, text 03825 if you want to get town news. But also having meetings available on demand, so the recorded meetings available on demand. Currently they're put through Metrocast, I believe, which is great if you have cable. If you don't, you're without access to those meetings. So potentially having a YouTube channel, which I had actually batted around with John. Andy saying something in the crowd, I'll have to pick your brain afterwards. But I think there's some opportunity there. And I know that Andy and the great technology team that we had looked at a way to record meetings too. So I know there's been some work done there. And the only other things I would say is, you know, potentially, you know, we have people that need volunteer experience, whether it's teams that are working in Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, ones that are going to private schools and need volunteer experience. So perhaps there's opportunity to engage them and get them involved in civic needs, while also providing services to town, free services to town. And, you know, as much as possible, we have some great groups in town too, that if the leadership from those groups is able to be engaged, maybe they can drive more people to be involved in the town too. So, and the last one I would put forward is, you know, townspeople as much as possible, supporting a wonderful, wonderful nonprofit that we have in town called Advocates for a Better Barrington, which puts forth that nice flyer that you all get before the town vote. Those are my ideas.
Like many others here, I was also part of the Envision Barrington process and part of the communications team, and what we learned in that is that people don't know where to find out information. Even though most of us roll our eyes saying, how can you not know? A lot of people don't know, and the library, what we found out on that committee is in the attempt to maybe start another website that was not connected to the town, that there are plenty of resources here, such as the library newsletter and the other sites. So one idea is more cross-fertilization of those sites so that the school board isn't only putting school information up on their site, but that there's information that goes across. And the ideas, other ideas that have been brought up, having to do with whether it be twice a year or quarterly meetings of the existing town boards to come together as a way of a Q&A with folks in town. And the library has been doing more of those types of events where they're open to the community at different times of the day to come in and be part of those discussions. So that would be another idea.
I would love to see more live streaming of events. I know I'm a special education teacher at Oyster River, and our Oyster River School Board meetings are live streamed. You can look on and watch them online. So that would be a great, thing to happen with the selectmen meetings, school board meetings, so everyone could have access.
Well, what everyone said, I agree. The website that has recently been changed is very easy for people to get around. It was very difficult years since we started it. This new one is very, very good. I'm very pleased with it. And I love how the newsletter from the library, we're able to put all our information to get out to people. So it goes through the email, and then they have some at the library that they print it, correct, but they don't send it out like that. But that's a great tool. And the live streaming would be wonderful for people to see the selectmen meetings or anything else that they would need. Ron?
We need to put the information where the people are. And I see there's quite a few that are lurking on a couple of Barrington-related Facebook pages. Why can't our town boards put their agendas on Facebook? It wouldn't cost anything, and a lot of people would see them. If you go on those Facebook pages, people are always asking very basic questions that they should already have the answers to if they're aware citizens in this town. But I think a lot of people don't want to really go digging to find the information. If we put it right out there where it's very easy for them to see, where they're browsing every day, they can find it. It just means boards would have to write slightly more detailed agendas, not just say new business, old business, but actually put on those agendas what they're planning to talk about. I know in selectmen's meetings, often the agenda is more about what's in the town administrator's report than what's on the printed agenda or the written agenda. So that a lot of things happen that people may not expect to happen at those meetings. So if we can be very forthright in getting that information out there, take a couple of minutes a week or a month or however often these boards meet, and just try that as a free and easy way of getting some info out there. I think we'll attract a few more people to the meetings. People may come who know what, have some interest in what's being talked about, and we might get more participation that way. And maybe those people will talk to other people and get them to come out. So anyway, I'm pretty happy with the turnout tonight. This is the first time in years I think we haven't had a snowstorm on forum night. So I appreciate you all coming out.
I'm going to give the school board a little love because I don't feel like they've gotten it. As a resident, obviously, I feel taxes are a big thing, and the school is a big portion of that burden. So where do you folks see the school board going in a way that continues to drive the appeal of having Oyster River, Co-Brown, and Dover as options, all while maintaining a tax rate lower than all of those towns?
Yeah, that's a great question, and once again, I think that's a town moderator question.
Turning the mic off.
No, that's a question. I mean, we looked at, building a high school at one point in time, and really the school choice model that was eventually adopted and implemented was really, the byproduct of what the taxpayers and parents and townspeople wanted, as opposed to, sort of the more arduous process of bonding and building a high school here in town. So, the question is, how do we maintain school choice with these schools and, keep our budgets under control? And, that is that has been a struggle. But the reality is that school choice is now going on in this, formal way. We're going into our 4th year. And the reality is that our budgets, while it's not easy, our budgets have been relatively stable. So in other words, the rate of increase in expenditures, and when we talk about expenditures, we're not talking about what the proposed budget, but we're talking about what the net expenditures are after the budget, and then of course at the end of the year there's a return to taxpayers. Has been relatively consistent in the last 3 to 4 years. I think on the low end it's been a 1.9, but on the high end maybe a 1.2% variance from year to year. So to that extent, it's been relatively flat and consistent. More importantly, I think what the schools have done is they've tried to hedge themselves. So in our contracts, we have some rate stabilization language in our tuition contracts, which helps mitigate, unexpected spikes. And then we also, early on in the school choice process, we built a capital reserve where we stowed away, a certain amount of money, so that if we did have an unanticipated increase in costs. And by the way, that increase in costs can come in one of 2 ways. First of all, it can come from a variance in tuition, but it can also come in the way where we have an unexpected high number of students that we have to tuition. So it's sort of a double threat for us. But the reserve fund that we created specifically for high school tuition gives us the ability to either mitigate completely unexpected changes in cost, or at least blend those, hedge or blend those costs over a number of years. So, that's really what we've done specific to high school tuition and how it impacts the operating budget year after year. But at the end of the day, the challenge is the same, and it will continue to exist, which is, state and federal money is unpredictable and varies widely year from year. While we're independent in the way that we raise money to support our schools, we are not independent in the rules and regulations and obligations we have. Those are laid before us, so we still have to meet our obligations. So those challenges aren't going to go away independent of schools or high school choice. And really the key for the board is just continually trying to balance, shuffle, reshuffle the cards to make sure that we're meeting our obligations. We're exceeding expectations for parents, students, and taxpayers, and we make decisions that are frankly taking into account our fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers.
That was pretty thorough. Good with that.
This is also for the school board candidates. It was mentioned that the middle school bond is going to be retired somewhat soon. Being on the planning board, I'm familiar with the capital improvement project, long range. What's on the long-range agenda, and I understand some new elementary school classrooms may well be needed around the time the middle school bond is retired. Is that the case in your opinion, and what are the factors that might cause this to be needed versus not?
Sure. Right now our numbers are pretty stable, so I don't think there's any planned construction coming up as soon as that's finished up.
That was a concern that probably goes back maybe about 5 or 6 years. It was a real concern about the population at the elementary school in particular. That was one of the concerns that eventually led to sort of the decommissioning of the kindergarten building and the renovation of what's now the ECLC. So there was a concern that if we kept kindergarten in the building that it was in over on the elementary school complex, that over the short and midterm that there would be a space constraint. But by and large, as Tim mentioned, you know, especially with the renovation, with the creation of the ECLC on Ramsdale, I think the district feels pretty comfortable that, frankly, we have enough headroom in all of our buildings for the students.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Any other comments from members of the panel?
This might have occurred to me earlier, and I should have said something. The group that did the Envision Barrington meeting was out of UNH. It was out of New Hampshire Listens at the Carsey School, and I am someone who's been a trained facilitator for that group for 6 years. It occurs to me that if we would like to ramp up the amount of civic engagement, we could potentially go to New Hampshire Listens, receive training. Members of the community can receive training. It's very inexpensive to become trained facilitators, and you have to go each year to continue to be skilled in your facilitation. But there's a group in Portsmouth that is basically Portsmouth Listens, and there could be a Barrington Listens. And as members of the community, you could become trained and you could facilitate those talks so that we're all putting together information as a collective group.
Anything else from members of the panel? Ron?
This Saturday, 9 to 10:30, most of us, and maybe some people that aren't here, will be at the library for a meet and greet with donuts. So that'll be an incentive to come out. Maybe that's what it takes to get people to come out. So I'd like to invite everybody to show up for that if you'd like to discuss any of these issues in more depth, one-on-one with the candidate.
I would like to just put in another personal plug. I'm not supposed to do this probably, but I will. I just want to encourage anyone who may see this. Hopefully it'll get well distributed and we'll get our message out. But there are so many opportunities to volunteer in Barrington, and I think Tim and Sam and others had commented on this. There are so many opportunities to be on the budget committee for the school, or the budget committee for the town, or you know, Barrington Bloomers, or BYA, or there's so many things that persons can volunteer for. And it really, in my opinion, is what makes the community so strong. And I encourage you to encourage your friends and neighbors to get involved. And if they're squawking about something, find an avenue through which they can get involved and hear their voice heard. And I think Barrington will continue to be a strong community if we can get people to volunteer their time. So thank you very much, and again, thank you to Wolfeboro Community TV to be here. We appreciate their involvement, and we appreciate your time. Thank you very much.